Hello, everybody. I'm Marisa Acocella, and I'm here with Father BRIAN HORGAN, Ph.D. of St. Lucy's Church. And Father HORGAN, I'm really thrilled to speak with you because I admire you in so many ways.
Thank you.
You're welcome. First of all, why don't I ask you a few questions about yourself, and then I want to talk to you about you've been very outspoken in terms of defending Catholicism, and you've been an incredible messenger of Christ, especially in times of extreme censorship. And when you think about what happened in the Olympics, right, the mockery of our religion. And when we did speak out, we were gaslit. So, and you've been relentless in your defense of our religion. And I want to ask you, first of all, how did you become a priest? And what brought you here? And then I want to know what made you speak out.
Okay. Where do you want me to start?
I want you to start with what made you become a priest.
I would say growing up in Ireland, my mother and father were very devout people. My mother was the only one in her family to get married. So her brother was a priest and her two sisters were nuns.
Wow.
So always growing up, we were surrounded by very happy people, happy and fulfilled people. And largely through those experiences, I felt deeply called to be a priest. I knew there's nothing would have given me greater joy or happiness, I think, than in serving God and serving his people and bringing to people then a sense of his love, a sense of his acceptance, and a sense of his goodwill towards all, you know. I really did that. So, you know, I came from a family of five. I have an older sister that lives in France, married to a Frenchman. My nephew's French. I have a twin sister.
I didn't know that.
Yes, my first wedding I ever did was Laura's wedding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she has two children, my nephew and my niece. And then I have a younger brother who lives in Ireland as well as Laura, and then a younger sister.
Wow. Okay.
So I have one brother, three sisters, and I'm trying to count my nephews and nieces now. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll go with 4 nephews and 1 niece.
Wow. Okay. Big family.
Yeah, lovely family.
Yeah.
So growing up, we grew up very not traditionally, but normal. There was nothing kind of fancy. We were working class in a working class area.
Where in Ireland?
In Cork.
In Cork. I love Cork.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I went to mass every Sunday. You know, my grandparents were very influential in my life. Parents of my mother.
In what way?
In a spiritual way, I think that they, like, anytime I'd be up there, I used to go up there twice a week to help them, and we used to pray the rosary on our knees at any time I was up there, and they always did it, even the day up to the day my grandmother died. She prayed the rosary on her knees. So they were very, very important people to me. And thankfully I had a good role model in my parents, and they shaped me to be who I am. And I was fortunate with good friends, with good sisters, a good brother, and also with good educational opportunities. I went to an all-boys high school, which was fantastic. And the friends I had then are still the friends I have now.
Wow.
Okay. I married many of them, baptized many of their kids, buried some of their parents. So it's wonderful. They're a wonderful group of guys.
So, so that was in Ireland, right? So when did you come over here? What made you come here? Why are you?
Well, no, that's a very good question. I think there's two types of Irish people, Marissa. There's ones that like to sit at home, are very almost nostalgic in a kind of unique way, that they kind of like sitting by the fire and drinking tea. And then there's others, because of our history in many ways, that have almost the immigrant spirit. Okay. And I always had that immigrant spirit. I knew I wouldn't live in Ireland.
Really?
Yeah.
I love Ireland, by the way.
It's nice to visit. Yeah, it is. But I've lived here 33 years. So I came over here when I was 20.
Wow. Okay.
And the reason I came over here was I knew I wanted to be a priest in America, and I wrote to 4 different dioceses. Okay. So I wrote to New York, Brooklyn, New York, Atlanta, Georgia,
Mhm.
Biloxi, Mississippi,
Mhm.
and Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay.
And the only reason I ended up in Palm Beach, Florida, was they were the first ones to respond.
I always think it's best to go with the first people who
Absolutely.
respond, because those are the people who want you the most.
Absolutely. And thank God, everything has worked out good for me.
Well, I'm pretty happy to be here with
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
You've enriched my life.
Well, it's not me, it's God.
Well, that's what
But thank
we
you.
really like about you, is that you're brilliant and you're humble at the
Thank
same
you.
time. So, okay, so you're here now. Okay, you came to Palm Beach,
Mhm.
and then what happened after that?
I started my studies at St. Vincent de Paul Regional Seminary here in Boynton Beach, just
Okay.
up the road from us in our own diocese.
Uh-huh.
And after my ordination there, I was ordained in Ireland,
Mhm.
where I used to be an altar boy, and where I married my sister. Afterwards buried my dad, baptized my nephews, all that stuff. So very
Mhm.
strong and connected.
Yeah, there's a lot of history.
A lot of
there.
history there.
Yeah.
And so after ordination, I was assigned, my first assignment was as an associate to a parish here in the diocese.
Mhm.
And after that, excuse me, I was assigned as a pastor in 2003 up at another St. Lucie in Port St. Lucie.
So that's really interesting. Okay, here we are. Can I digress a
Mhm.
little bit?
Mhm.
Okay, here we are at St. Lucie Church in Highland Beach, Florida, right? You were, or what did you say, ordained in St. Lucie? You went to St. Lucie?
No, I was assigned to
Assigned
St.
to-
Lucie as pastor. my
Assigned to
first
St.
pastorate, yeah.
Lucie as pastor in Port St. Lucie.
Right.
So that's 3 St. Lucies.
Right.
So what do you think the significance of that is?
Honestly, I think it's to show people, well, firstly, as you know, St. Lucie is the patroness of eyes.
Exactly. Okay.
And I think my mission, as I try to discern my mission each and every day,
Mhm.
is to show people the way
I think
and
that's
give
really
them
true.
clarity of sight.
I think that's so true. that
Because
you-
there is so much darkness
Mhm.
and there's so many shadows that hit us each and every day.
Mhm.
If we're not focused on the truth, on the light, we're lost completely.
And that, I think, is what resonates with me the most when you speak, because you are not afraid to go talk about what the dark side and what is going on there, but how to transmute the energy and head towards the
Right.
light.
Well, I
So,
think one of the things that I learned in the military was,
Mhm.
don't just complain and leave it. You have to come up with a solution.
Exactly.
And I firmly believe in my heart and soul that change and growth in our church will
Mhm.
only occur from the grassroots up. It will not come from the top down.
That's the other thing that I like a lot about you. One of the things I like most about you is that you are not afraid to speak up. You are courageous, fearless, and you speak like this. You are an incredible conduit.
Well, I appreciate those words. I'm a priest. That's all I'd say.
Oh, wow. Okay. So,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing. You're very humble,
I'm just a priest.
but you do speak out,
I'm
and
not afraid
you're
to
not afraid to
touch
speak
the
out.
topics, no.
And that's, I think, why people really come to St. Lucie's, because they know that you will speak out and you will defend.
Well, I certainly never be
Mhm.
afraid to stand up for Catholicism or stand up for what we believe in any way, shape, or fashion. But
Mhm.
I do think people come because of the community
Mhm.
and because of the sense of
True.
welcome.
Yes.
But as regards, it's not that I'm a kind of a lightning rod priest. I'm not like that at all.
Mhm.
But I'm not afraid to point out wrongs that are occurring, that people are very silent. Like, for example, the Catholic population in America is
Mhm.
over nearly 25%.
Right.
It's one in 4 are Catholic.
That's a lot.
Now, you wouldn't believe it.
Right. Why wouldn't you believe it?
Because of the silence of the majority of Catholics.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So why do you think the majority of Catholics are silent?
Because I don't believe I think 2 reasons.
Mhm.
Firstly, they were never thought to stand up and
Mhm.
express themselves after Vatican II. We lost a whole generation of people, which was a tremendous
What
error.
happened? Okay. I'm gonna ask you questions.
okay.
as you- What
And-
happened after Vatican II?
Well, when everything changed,
Okay,
the liturgy changed,
Mhm.
the whole idea of Catholicism, the whole idea of, of throwing wide open the doors of the Vatican, let the Holy Spirit in. It went a little too far. And
in what way?
it went towards fierce liberalism in many
Mhm.
ways. And at the same time, it was pulled back with the likes of Humane Vitae by Paul VI,
Mhm.
when he was advised not to make it an official teaching of the church, but he went and did it anyhow.
Okay,
So like that's a whole story in itself. We could talk for days on the effects of Vatican II.
okay, can you just sort of touch on that a little bit more, like, not briefly,
Well,
because
no,
I
I
know it
mean,
could be.
I think like, say, for example, the liturgy.
Mhm.
Well, there's a deep desire in everyone's heart for
Mhm.
something spiritual or something mystical or something special.
Yes,
We all have it,
right,
and it's a basic need.
okay,
You remember when you were growing up, you believed in Santa Claus,
right, I did.
and you also believed in the man in the moon and the tooth fairy. So we had that need. We still have that need, and that is why we see tremendous people come to church at Christmas time, because they know there's something mysterious has happened. And the mystery, of course, was the incarnation. Christ, God's, sending us his son. And I think kind of that was, the liturgy served that need for many people. It brought communities together. Certainly it may not have been perfect. I'm sure there's some other people, some other priests would say it's not perfect, and that's fine, that's their opinion.
Right,
But in my experience, I found that it drew people together. There was confraternities, there was, women's clubs, there was everything revolved around the parish life. But now that's all changed. And a good example would be after COVID. And I don't believe the churches should have been shut down.
I'm so glad you said that, because I lived in New York and everything was shut
I
down.
don't believe that was.
That was a
I remember
really tragic.
I remember hearing a line in a movie once about the famine in Ireland. There's the great, it's actually a genocide where close to 4 million Irish people starved to death. And it's the movie called The Field.
Okay,
And there's a line in it, and it says, one farmer says to a priest, there wasn't one priest died in the famine.
oh, okay.
Now, should the churches have been shut down? Well, I have my own opinion on that, and I'll obviously follow the official line, but I celebrated mass here
You
every
did,
day, yes.
that's beautiful,
Yes.
because I couldn't find.
No.
I like St. Patrick's was right around the corner for me in New York
The
City.
one
Shut
time,
down.
people needed the church.
Yeah, and liquor stores were open.
Yeah.
Box stores were open.
Right.
That was
So
disgraceful.
tying that in then with what I was saying about Vatican II and the liturgy, where our lives revolved around the parish, we went to devotions during the week or holy hours or something. Now it's almost as if liturgy is available on demand. So instead of our lives revolving around the weekend, we'll put on the mass on our iPads or our TVs, pre-recorded it, sit down, put our feet up, and that's not the reason. And that's one of the reasons why I do not broadcast or do not record masses here at St. Lucie.
That's great, because you know what? I think that people really crave connection.
It's all about relationships. Everything is
all
about relationships.
It is. And I think people now more than ever crave a connection with God,
Absolutely.
with Jesus, Mary, consciousness, whatever.
Well, I would say they seek a connection,
Okay,
but they're looking for a connection in the wrong place.
okay, so they're looking, what do you mean by that?
I think they're looking at what society says, that they're saying, well, if you don't have this, well, you're not this, or, instead of God deciding who you are, you decide who you are, you're better than God.
Right.
No, I mean, that doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. And as a
Okay.
society, it's a very dangerous road to be on. Because if we're founded as a nation on Judeo-Christian principles, and if we stray from that fact, we might as well just hang up our hats and say, let's start again and define it what we want it to be. But if we don't stick to the truth, and it's a truth wrapped in compassion, we're lost. We're totally lost. And even the liturgy this past weekend said, that pure religion is this, two things: take care of widows and orphans and take care of your soul,
Yeah,
from the letter of James.
okay, that was a
And
beautiful.
it was beautiful reading,
Yeah.
beautiful. And, you know, what pains me
Mhm.
is I see that even in people very close to me, that the need for God is gone.
Hmm.
But yet, you know, in a positive sense on that,
Mhm.
people know, I believe, where to go to when there's a crisis. But why wait until there's a crisis?
Yeah,
Why don't you come before the crisis?
exactly. It's like your health is, people maintain their health. You know, they exercise every day. They try, well, some people try to exercise every day, eat well, and that's like maintaining your health.
Right.
Take the offensive. Spiritual health is also
Very important.
very important.
Exactly. Very, very important. And I see that even serving as chaplain to the police department, fire department here, and sheriff's office. Very, very important.
Mhm.
Spiritual health. Because if we're not well spiritually, we
Mhm.
can't be well in any other real sense if our mind is not focused and sharpened.
Mhm.
And I think for Catholics, the importance of knowing our faith, living our faith, and defending our faith is vitally important.
So, okay, I agree with you. Let's talk again about defending our faith. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, it's important because Catholicism is under attack.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's the last acceptable prejudice
Mhm.
in society today is to be anti-Catholic.
Right. I agree.
You saw it on the Olympics. What a
Right.
slap in the face to Catholics. Of the Eucharist, something that's so central in the life of a Catholic,
Mhm.
to be put on, presented with drag queens, with all sorts of people. All
Mhm.
they were doing was effectively mocking the church.
I agree
And
with
what
you.
saddened me
Mhm.
was the silence that followed.
I couldn't agree with you
And
more.
France at one time was known as the mother of the church,
Mhm.
because you go through France. My sister lives in France. I visit her very often,
Mhm.
and you'll see churches everywhere,
Mhm.
but they're empty. Because after the revolution, they did what they set out to do: destroy the faith in France. And look at the great saints that we got from France: Saint John Vianney, Saint Joan of Arc,
Mhm.
the Little Flower.
Right.
All those beautiful, powerful saints. You go back into medieval times, you've got the Abbey of Cluny,
Mhm.
which was a fierce center of learning in Europe. You know, you had tremendous, wonderful people from in the Catholic life, in the Catholic world from France, and yet people claim to be, you know, they claim to be Catholic and all that. One thing that, you know, I found very ironic is when Notre Dame was burnt, everybody was crying and upset, and they were praying, and then they put up with this. I mean, what a contradiction! And that's exactly the way French society is. It's a contradiction.
It is a contradiction.
Because on the one hand, they say that they're, you know, that they're, you know, that they have the sense of everybody's welcome. That's not true.
Right.
That's not true. They don't welcome the migrant.
Okay.
They don't welcome those who are illegal. And I'm not just saying France.
Mhm.
I'm saying a lot of countries, our own in particular.
Mhm.
But when you compare Notre Dame, they see Notre Dame as a historical monument or building. It's a working cathedral,
It is a working cathedral.
but it's not owned by the church.
It's not owned by the church?
No, it's owned by the state.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Huh. So what does that mean?
It means that the state looks at it as a monument.
So, in other words,
The state
is
supersedes
the church.
church.
Wow.
And that was part of the revolution, and afterwards was to destroy the church the best way possible. Henry VIII did it in Ireland when he dissolved all the monasteries.
That's true, because wasn't that because he just wanted to keep getting married and getting married?
Well, the Pope wouldn't give in to his divorce request.
Right.
He stood out to him.
Well, I have a whole issue with the royals anyway,
Yeah.
so that's a whole other story, but, and then just yesterday, didn't a church burn down in France?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
it's
still
very real.
ongoing.
It's very real. There's never been so many martyrs created
Mhm.
in the history of the church than were created from 1900 until the year 2000.
Okay, why do you think that is?
Well,
Mhm.
I think it's people standing up for what they believe in, even
Mhm.
to the point of death.
Right. I mean, you do see that people are standing up for medical freedom in their lives. They're losing their lives. So it seems that it's very clear that there's a battle between good versus evil. Would you
I would
agree to that?
Mhm.
And I feel like Catholicism is like a stronghold of good, fighting for good, the battle in the
Mhm.
forefront of the battle of good versus evil. So that's probably why we're targeted, would you think?
Um, I would say yes and no. I would say
Okay.
the battle is not a recent battle. It's been going on since the time of Christ.
Right, right.
Even today, in today's gospel, we
Mhm.
heard the demon recognized Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and he ordered him out of the man. The church is not perfect. The church
Right.
has had its dark days.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when I look back at that,
Mhm.
that all occurred just as I was ordained, with the scandals and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I, you know, I remember I was flying home once from Miami to London,
Mm-hmm.
and I sat next to this man, and we started talking. And that time, people used to talk to each other on planes.
Right.
And he asked me what I did for a living,
Mm-hmm.
and I told him I was a teacher. And then I eventually asked him what he did for a living, and he told me he was a Catholic priest.
Oh my
I
goodness.
was- I
So
was like, oh my goodness, this plane is going to crash. I'm convinced.
why did you tell him you were a teacher? You just didn't want to
Well,
say that
I
you
didn't
were.
want to open up this whole thing of the child abuse
Oh
and
yeah.
everything, you know. I
Okay.
didn't want to open up all that. And maybe I should have been more brave, but I certainly learned from that experience. It would never happen again.
Right. Okay.
Never happen again, no.
Mm-hmm.
But it did kind of,
Shine a light on
yes, it
this
did. It
little
did. Yeah,
situation
it did.
there.
It did. But he understood. I told him that. And I mean, he
Mhm.
understood, you know.
Well, I mean, I can understand why you would do that though, because I mean, just like there's good people and bad people,
Right.
there's been priests that obviously have done some really horrific
Right.
things. And, you
And
know,
unfortunately, at that point,
mhm,
one apple ruins the bunch.
that's true.
And it was less than 4% of priests.
Okay.
But now your traditional or definition or your classic child abuser is a married man.
Oh, really?
That's a proven fact. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So as I was mentioning yesterday when we were talking about children's liturgy of the word, the Catholic Church now is actually the safest place for children.
Really?
The safest place, because everybody's fingerprinted, background checked yearly.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody knew if there's anything in the past,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a no-show.
Okay.
And priests, even I would like to think in the formation of priests now,
Mm-hmm.
as I said, I was ordained in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to think that there's greater emphasis placed on screening candidates
Mm-hmm.
and accepting candidates.
Well, that's good to know, because it really disturbed me that if a priest was found guilty, they were just shipped to like South America or
They
another,
were shifted around. Yeah.
they were shifted around.
Yeah.
And I mean, look,
It would almost make you think,
mhm,
was it a systemic failure of leadership? Because bishops at that time
mhm,
knew what was happening, and they were thinking more of the reputation of the priest
mhm.
than they were thinking of the welfare of the victim.
I think this is a systemic issue in terms of anybody with power, though.
Right.
I would say that with government,
Mhm.
right? I would
I would
say,
agree.
yeah. Corporations, anywhere you have any kind of hierarchy,
Mhm.
I think people, like the welfare of the people is the last thing they consider oftentimes. And the thing is, people have a voice and they could rise up and speak out,
Mhm.
which is again why I think your voice is important, because you do speak out and you encourage us to speak out. So and then this whole thing about what goes on in the church, we could talk about that for hours too, but right now I want to focus on speaking out and what we can do, again, as people who are Catholic and are Christian to speak out for our religion and fight the good fight.
Well,
What can
it's
we
very
do?
interesting because, as you know, the election is coming up in November.
Mhm,
And I would never tell anyone how to vote.
mhm,
I would tell them to vote as a Catholic,
right,
because you can't separate your faith when you go into a polling location.
mhm,
If you support an organization that provides abortion on demand
mhm,
outside a convention and offers vasectomies to men outside a convention,
mhm,
there's something drastically, if not diabolically, wrong with
mhm,
our society to accept that.
mhm, mhm.
When all are protected under the law, apparently it does not apply to those most weak and vulnerable
Mhm,
in the safest place they could ever be, in their mother's body.
right,
And for a political party to do that, and for members of the Catholic faith to support that, I would say they're not Catholic.
mhm,
I would also say, with utmost of respect, we had one president who was Catholic, and
mhm,
he died in 1963.
mhm, mhm,
And I just hope anybody that professes Catholicism and supports abortion,
mhm.
I dread to think who will meet them when they go to heaven, if they go to heaven, because I feel it'll be those babies that'll be the first ones they meet.
Wow. Okay.
And
I
that
think
goes not
that's,
just for politicians,
uh-huh,
but for anybody that supports it. Now, I know there's like, it's not a black and white issue, I know
right,
that.
right,
And we obviously we have to take care of the person,
uh-huh,
but we also have to bear in mind that it's not just one individual, and it's not just a choice.
right.
Life is not a choice. We
What you-
didn't choose to be born,
Right. Mm-hmm,
but yet God created us
mm-hmm,
to be born,
right.
and he gave us the gift of life. So who are we to take that onto us and away from God? I think that's a very
I
dangerous.
think that's a very, okay,
No,
that's a
if we
perspective
do
I
it
haven't.
if we do it to the weakest and vulnerable,
Mhm.
what's to say that the elderly aren't next?
Okay.
What's to say that those who might be suffer from a disability might be next?
Mm-hmm,
What about those who may suffer from physical ailment or something? Who's to say? It's like even the death penalty. I don't agree with that either.
I don't agree with that either.
The state
Well-
does not have the power to take the life of another one, because violence begets violence.
Violence does beget violence. Well, I'm sure when people hear this, some people are going to be triggered, and that's a fact, but it's also how you feel. And I think that if you are a Catholic, and I think if you do support abortion, I used to be a feminist, and in some ways I still am, but I'd really think that fighting against the child it's a great tragedy.
I can't tell you, Marisa, how many people have come to me in confession
Mm-hmm,
that have experienced an abortion
yeah.
in their youth.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people well into their 80s, 70s, and 80s.
And they
And it's
regret that.
haunted them every single day.
Well, thank God I never had
Yeah.
one. And thank God I never had one.
But when you talk about the reactions,
Mhm,
sometimes our success is defined not by our supporters, but by our opponents.
that's
So if we're
true.
doing the right thing,
Mm-hmm,
if we stick close to Christ in the best way that we can, if we take part in the sacramental life of the church, which he gave us,
mm-hmm.
then I think we're on a good path, really.
I think you're right. And I think the more pushback we have, the more we should speak out.
Exactly. We should never be afraid. But, without getting into, superiors or hierarchy or anything, I would always say we need to speak out from class level. That's the only way change will occur.
Well, that's why I really wanted to talk to you, and I hope we can continue these conversations, because I think they're really important, and I have so many questions for you. So I want to keep this going, if
Super.
that's okay.
Thank you. I'd be very happy to do it again.
Okay, fantastic. All right, everybody, that's it for Father Horgan and I, and thank you again.
Thank
for
you very much.
Speaking.
Thank you.
out
I
and
look forward to
speak-
doing it again.
Me too. All
Thank you
right,
very much.
thank you.
Thank you.